Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Before we get started, a special thanks to all my viewers for sticking with me for 100 episodes. I'm really happy with how this series has been going, and I'm looking forward to hundreds more. Now, onto our question. Amy attacks with two 4/4s. Nick blocks both of them with a monstrous 100-handed one. Nick says, go to damage, and Amy says, wait, before damage, I'm going to play giant growth on one of my 4/4s. At this point, the players call for a judge. Nick says that his 100-handed one should be able to trade with one of Amy's 4/4s, the one that didn't get buffed, whereas Amy contends that both of her creatures should live. What do you do? So, before we start with the answer, I'm going to talk a little bit about exactly what should have happened, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Whenever you have one creature that's blocking or being blocked by multiple enemy creatures, you have to declare something called a damage assignment order. Basically, a list that says what order you're going to deal damage to the enemy creatures. You aren't allowed to assign any combat damage to any creatures on that list until you've already assigned lethal damage to all the creatures that are above that one on the list. So, you can see that the issue is Nick did not declare a damage assignment order for a 100-handed one, even though he needed to. Now, players skip this step all the time, and it doesn't usually end up mattering for anything. However, it's pretty embarrassing to not have one here because it definitely makes a difference as to whether Amy or Nick gets their desired outcome out of this play. As described in the statement in the beginning of the episode that detailed what happened, Nick is the one at fault here for trying to move on to the next step before he had done all of the stuff that he needed to do in the current step. This is a game rule violation and generally has a penalty of a warning. Amy also did not notice this mistake in a timely manner and therefore will be getting something called a failure to maintain game state, which carries a warning also. Now on to the fix, and this is one that gets really interesting because there's a lot of stuff going on here. So, in cases of a game rule violation, the first thing you want to look at is to see if a simple backup is sufficient to undo the damage that was caused by the mistake. A simple backup is basically where you undo the last game action that a player completed and see how the game looks there. In this case, that would be accomplished by undoing Amy's casting of giant growth. And, sure enough, if you do that, then we get back to exactly the spot in the game that we would need to be for Nick to declare a damage assignment order for his 100-handed one. So that's probably what I would do if we had the situation described above. Now, simple backups work pretty good if you have a situation that's really close time-wise or at least game action-wise to when the mistake happened, but they fall apart pretty quickly. For example, if Amy had instead played a card draw spell and then drew into the giant growth that she played, well, a simple backup wouldn't help us out in that case. So let's take a look at what we might do in this modified situation. In a game rule violation, you basically have three options to work with as a judge. You can either leave the game state as it is, or you can back up to the point immediately before the error, or in some certain situations outlined in the Magic IPG, you can perform what's called a partial fix. Basically, you leave the game state exactly as it is, but you change one small thing according to how the rules are laid out that gives you a game state that's legal instead of illegal. Basically, the partial fix is meant to be a band-aid that patches out the fact that there was a mistake in the game. Indeed, forgetting to declare a damage assignment order is one such case where a partial fix is allowed. So, let's see how that would look. If we enact the partial fix of having Nick declare a damage assignment order at this time, well, we come into a little bit of an issue. You see, if Nick is a savvy player, he'll definitely put Amy's creature that didn't get buffed first on the damage assignment list. That way, he will get his desired outcome of getting to trade with at least one of Amy's 4/4s. Now, that's an issue because if there was no mistake that got committed, Amy would have access to which creature was getting first on the damage assignment list and would almost certainly play the buff spell on that one so that both of her creatures would live, i.e. her desired outcome. Because we changed what the outcome is, this fix isn't looking super great. Fortunately for judges, you are allowed to perform a simple backup immediately before you perform the partial fix. if it makes things go smoother, which I think definitely would be the case here. If we were to do something like that, it would be accomplished by having Amy undo the casting of giant growth, and then Nick declare a damage assignment order, and then we would proceed from there. Amy may or may not recast the giant growth, and if she does decide to recast it, she'll have the knowledge that she should have had all along of which creature is the first on the damage assignment order. Now, this gets us pretty close to what the game state would have been if there had been no mistake. However, do note that Nick has a little bit of extra information when he's deciding the combat damage assignment order that he ordinarily would not have had. He knows that Amy is planning on playing a combat trick. And that's why I have to stress to all the players, if you're planning on playing a combat trick, definitely confirm with your opponent what the damage assignment order is, if appropriate, because there's really no way that any fix a judge comes up with is going to be able to undo this loss of advantage. And that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me. Actually, there's a lot of loose ends that I wish I could have talked about with this situation. For example, we just kind of took it for granted that both players didn't understand or didn't think it would be relevant, so they kind of glossed over how the combat damage step actually works. Now, it's okay to do that if you're just talking about a rules question and you're trying to learn how game rule violations get handled, but in a real game, especially with a situation like this, it's important to investigate the player's awareness and intent of the issue. Join me again tomorrow for DDR number 101, where I go over Investigations 101 and use this as a case study for how you might do something like that. Until then, I hope you have a great day.